This Western Conference Finals Game 5 player props and early NBA Finals MVP picks betting edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick, plus a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code NBA SGPN. We're also brought to you by the Mega Memorial Merch Sale. 15% off of everything in the SGPN merch store with promo code SGPNMay. Act now as the sale ends tomorrow on Friday. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Thursday, May the 30th, I believe. Yes, it is. 12:08 on the East Coast. Here to get into our Game 5 player props for the Western Conference Finals between the Wolves and the Mavericks. We'll also look at the early NBA Finals MVP market right now before we do officially get the matchup for the finals. We do know, obviously, it's going to be the Celtics as they await the winner of the Dallas Mavericks and the Timberwolves series here. Obviously, we know Dallas is up 3-1, looking to close it out on Thursday night in Minnesota, and Minnesota hoping to extend it to a Game 6, which we played, I believe, on Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken. But joining me here to help me break everything down on the hardwood, I've got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up, It's a beautiful, beautiful day to make some money sports betting, man. And we have a Western Conference Game 5. Let's jump into it, see how we can get paid for tonight,
Yeah, you and I were talking offline. I was like, there was going to be no way that we would see the NBA have two sweeps in the conference finals. Indiana had their opportunities, man, to extend the series, especially in Game 3 and Game 4. Just weren't able to get it done. Did have Tyrese Halliburton for those 2 games there in the second half of Game 2 as well. But give Minnesota credit for, to Boston for wrapping it up and getting some serious extended rest here before they do start the finals next Thursday. Is the official date, June 6th, which will be Game 1 for the NBA Finals. And the game that we're talking about here tonight, I think the odds were against, obviously, the Minnesota Timberwolves. And look, this series, Chris, I know we talked about in the last Propcast that it's been closer than, what we've looked at, because for 3.5 quarters, these games have been competitive. It's just been coming down to which team and which players have been more clutch. And we mentioned that the first 3 games of the series, it was Luka and it was Kyrie. And then in Game 4, we saw that Dallas Mavericks struggled a little bit down the stretch shooting the basketball. And we saw, I think the difference in that game, honestly, was the 2 3-pointers that Cat hit late in that fourth quarter, because they won that game by 5 points. And I know at the end, we saw Luka hit that 3. He missed the free throw. It could have been a different discussion, or maybe, could have gone to overtime, whatever the case might have been. But Anthony Edwards stepped up. Cat had a rough first half. He bounced back in the second half. Mike Conley was great as well, Chris. But you have any thoughts from Game 4 before we talk about Game 5?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is what you just mentioned. It was the 2. You mentioned the 2 threes by Cat. He shot 5. Well, we shot 9 for 13 from the field. Yeah. Everybody was kind of doubting him in that spot, and there was the better duo has won every game so far. And of course, it's been Luka and Kyrie outside of Game 4, of course. And you mentioned the player, but I'll just talk about the team aspect. Fourth quarter, you got Luka and Kyrie on one side, and you got Cat and Ant on the other side, and you really just had to pick, who you choose in that moment. Game 4 was the first time the Timberwolves were able to even tie the score. The margin was 0. They both scored 27 apiece in the fourth quarter, and they had a 5-point lead. They won the third quarter, I think, by 5. But for the series, the Dallas Mavericks are winning the fourth quarter, 28-22.
Yeah.
So that 6-point differential is the difference. And like you said, it's 2 Cat 3s and 6 points. There you go. So, yeah, I think that's been the biggest takeaway, is how these games have closed. Dallas seems like they are good enough defensively to always kind of stick around. Mm-hmm. And then if you're the Timberwolves, you really just need some more shot making, because if you go through and look at it, they really have not been able to slow down Luka as we kind of anticipated them to be, especially, with his health coming in into, Game 1 of the series. Luka has looked amazing. So I think that's what it really comes down to,
Yeah, I think that, I was betting on the team totals for Minnesota, because I believe they have cashed in all 4 games thus far in the Western Conference Finals, and I was kind of good. And exactly what you mentioned, that fourth quarter has been the difference in how many points that they had been averaging prior to Game 4. And I mean, if they were a shot better, I think that this would be a different series right now. It could be tied up 2 games apiece and possibly heading towards maybe a Game 7 is a possibility right now. But right now, obviously, we officially have a Game 5 here for the Western Conference Finals. So we'll get into it here in momentarily for our player props for this game. But before we continue the conversation here, let me tell everyone about the college baseball tournament that's starting this weekend. Make sure you guys get over and check out my guy, Noah Bieniek. He is absolutely crushing it with the college baseball experience. He's got all of the regional tournaments, the winners picked, and they're doing a contest over on the college baseball experience. You have a chance to win a $200 SGPN gift card. All you got to do is go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bracket. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bracket. And last but not least, we are running the Mega Memorial Day merch sale in our merch store. You get 15% off of everything in the merch store. Make sure that promo code SGPN May. And again, it does run out on Friday of this week. So again, make sure you guys get in there. Use that promo code SGPN May. Get 15% off everything happening in the merch store. All right, Chris, we talked a lot about some of the players that, are the 4 stars that have shined respectively in Luka and Kyrie. And then, we saw Ant and Karl-Anthony Towns step up late in that fourth quarter in Game 4. Cat coincidentally has almost recorded a triple-double in the last games 3 and 4. I know he fell, I think it was an assist short in Game 4. And I think he was a rebound and an assist short in Game 3. But he's been doing real well for them. Obviously, we know what Luka has been able to do as well. Just an injury note here before we do get into the player props here, Chris. I did see that Derek Lively is present at shoot-around. It seems like he will be able to go tonight for the Dallas Mavericks. And again, that front court, we saw Daniel Gafford step up, had some clutch blocks down the stretch in Game 4 and in Game 3, frankly, when Derek Lively left the game and had, the clutch alley-oop to clinch it in Game 3. So you do get Derek Lively back. Obviously, that's a great positive for the Mavericks. All right, Chris, let's get into our player props here. I have a couple. I try to dig up 3, but I have at least 2 that I do like. I'll dig up a third one here as well. But I want you to lead us off. What do you got for player prop number 1?
Yeah, so we're going under. Mr. Rudy Gobert himself, under. I see his rebounds. They still got this line out at 11.5. And, I've been talking about this one since Game 2 when he went under. And it's really that, it's a combination of that drop coverage and, Dallas continuing to want to pull him away from the rim. Like Luka and Kyrie is still, trying to get him up as much as possible. He hasn't been dropping as much, right? We see him kind of come up to the screen until the defender can actually get back. And then, then he'll, drop back. But all of those things, just lead to Rudy Gobert continuing to go under this number. I think, it is coming down now because it was 12.5 and it was, I think it was minus 120 on Bet365 in Game 2. And now I see it down to 11.5 and it's juiced at minus 128 on FanDuel. But I like the under here, if he's under in all 4 games so far. So he really just playing the numbers here. He hasn't gotten 12 rebounds. He's averaging 8.3 in the conference finals on 20.8 rebound chances. And to put that in perspective, he was averaging 10.9 before he got to the conference finals in the playoffs. And he was averaging 19.1 rebound chances. So when I think about that, and he's not even been the best rebounder on his team. Anthony Edwards is actually averaging 8.8 rebounds. So, I don't like that as much. There's a potential for him to get in foul trouble as well. There's potential for Naz Reid to be playing really, really good. So, 12 rebounds just seems like a really high number for somebody who hasn't gotten that so far throughout the course. And I think that it goes with the game script because if you're watching it, he's not having a ton of offensive rebound chances just because a lot of that Dallas action is pulling him away from the rim. So I'll take Rudy Gobert first prop to go under his 11.5 rebounds here.
Yeah, you mentioned it as well. Another fact for Rudy, Chris, has been he's been in foul trouble, man. He's had at least 5 fouls in the first, I think I want to say the last 3 games for the Timberwolves. Yeah, he's had exactly 5 fouls. The minutes haven't really been there. He's had at least 5 fouls in 4 of the last 5 games dating back to Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets. So it's been the fact that he's committing these silly fouls and it's keeping them off the floor, and that only goes well with what you mentioned as what the defensive strategy has been for the Mavericks and trying to lure him away from the basket and not get those rebounds. And I mean, it ties right into my first player prop. You mentioned Anthony Edwards as him being the leading rebounder. I like his rebounds and assists to go over the number of 14.5 for this game. It was at minus 105 on Wednesday night when it did pop up. Let me just double check it here. Yeah, it's still at 14.5 at minus 105. You and I were talking offline, Chris, and I said that Anthony Edwards has recorded nearly a triple-double in the last 2 games. In game 4, he fell 1 assist short of it. And then in game 3, he had 9 rebounds and 9 assists. And again, like Chris mentioned, that he's been the leading rebounder, where he's averaging, 8+ rebounds per game. He's also getting the assist as well. And again, when you're in an elimination game, number one, I know that Anthony Edwards is going to get the minutes. At minimum, he's going to be out there for 40+ minutes. I know he's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to find his guys to distribute the basketball. He's had at least 7 assists in all 4 against the Mavericks thus far in this series, and he's had at least 9 rebounds in 3 out of the 4 games, including 2 games where he had double-digit rebounds for this team. So I think that's going to continue here, and over the last 5 games, back to the series against the Denver Nuggets in game 7, he's averaging 8.6 rebounds and 8 assists. So at this number 14.5 around minus 105, I do like Anthony Edwards to fill the stat sheet again in this game. So my first player prop ties in very nicely with the under that Chris mentioned for Rudy Gobert. So I'm going Anthony Edwards rebounds and assists to go over 14.5 here, Chris.
Yeah, I can't talk you off of this. This dude is, like you say, almost averaging triple-double. Those numbers are 8.8 and 8.3, I think, in his rebounds and assists. And you would just expect the defense to continue to give him a lot of attention. I think if you're coach, you coach Kid here, you want somebody else to have to beat you, right? And we've seen, guys step up like a Jaden McDaniels and Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards. We saw this in game 7 in Denver when they were on the road with their backs against the wall, down double digits at halftime, him continuing to trust his teammates. So if they're going to continue to send the help, I think he's going to continue to do that as well. Those assist numbers, his usage rate in general is just through the roof here, especially when Karl Anthony Towns continues to be in foul trouble, which could continue, could happen again today. So, yeah, no way I can look towards Anthony Edwards to go under here. If I'm looking at his potential assists on the playoffs, he averaging 6.5 assists on 10.7 potential assists. But I wanted to look specifically at the conference finals just to see how much these numbers have changed. So what did I say? 6.5 assists on, let's see, Mr. Edwards, 6.5 assists on 10.7 potential. And in the conference finals, He's averaging 8.3 on 13. So both of those numbers have skyrocketed here. I think it's a great look by you. I'm probably end up tailing this one.
Yeah, again, we like to talk a lot about usage rate, and I know you love talking about the potential assists, which is a great stat as well. I think this was something I looked at when we did the last episode. I forgot who the player was, but we were looking at potential assist. I think it was Drew Holiday we talked about because it took the RA for him on the over in that game in our last episode, and that one got to the window as well. A majority of it was because he racked up the assists in that game, but yeah, I do like Anthony Edwards. Again, possibly get near another triple-double here tonight for game 5 here tonight, Chris. So I'll go with that as player prop number 1 for myself. All right, before we continue the conversation and get into round 2 of our player props, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. The NBA playoffs are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your other favorite sports, and you can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog running a ton of different promos, bonus cash airdrops, specials, giveaways, and more throughout the NBA playoffs. So make sure to follow at Underdog Picks on Twitter to keep an eye out. Underdog is available in 30+ states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code NBA SGPN. All right, Chris, take us over to player prop number 2, my man. What do you got?
So we went over on one. We went under on one. Now we're gonna go over here. If I'm looking at bounce back game. Big game incoming, in my opinion, anyway. At least I think he clears this number. Mr. Naz Reid, points prop sitting at 10.5. I think 11.5 is playable as well. I mean, this dude, first of all, he's the matchup nightmare. They don't really have anyone that can stop him. He can put the ball on the floor. He can shoot a ton of, shoot the three. He's a great rebounder as well. So getting some second chance points out there. And I think he bounces back. He's coming off a very slight game. They didn't need his offensive production as much just because Anthony Towns was shooting the ball so effectively, going 9 for 13 from the field and pretty much didn't miss a three-pointer. If we're expecting some regression here for Anthony Towns, which I do expect him to, struggle just a little bit more. He shot the letter off the ball in that last game. But you expect Naz Reid to play a little bit better. He's over in 3 to 4 games so far. I think it's the perfect bounce back spot after, like I said, just a 6-point game. We got to remember back, short-term memory will tell us to maybe fade Naz Reid. But in game 1 and game 2, when he was at home, he had 15 points and 23 points in the first 2 games. And we remember, him being one of the reasons he was the only offense at one point out there. So, it lets you know how much of a nightmare problem he could be. I expect him to play close to the 25 minutes that he's been averaging here. And I also think the last thing I want to mention is we talked about Rudy Gobert potentially getting in foul trouble and Anthony Towns potentially getting in foul trouble. Who's going to be that guy? Just could be even more minutes for Naz Reid. And I do expect Coach Chris Finch and that coaching staff to play him big minutes if he gets hot. So I like Naz Reid, bounce back spot him, over the 10.5 points.
I'm right there with you. There's a couple ways that we could attack Naz Reid here tonight. Couldn't talk you off of the points. If you want to go points and rebounds as well, he's done a decent job of rebounding. But also his 3-point prop here, Chris, it's at 1.5. You mentioned, right? He's been really good scoring the basketball, but also knocking down the 3-point shot. So if you don't want to go with the points prop, 10.5, 11.5. Now, the thing that we've noticed, and I know why you picked this, is that he's actually coming off of those screens in these games and been able to get to the basket and get those layups, where Karl-Anthony Towns has not been able to do that. And we've noticed that over the last 2 games here for Naz Reid. But, you mentioned the home numbers as well for Naz Reid, Chris. And we'll go back to games 1 and game 2 at home for Naz Reid. So he took 9 total shots in game 1, 6 came from beyond the arc. He took 13 total shots in game 2, 9 of them came from beyond the arc. He took 10 in game 3, 5 of them came from beyond the arc. And then in game 6, where because Karl-Anthony Towns was playing well, Naz Reid only got a 1 3-point shot and off of 6 attempts. So I think there's very different ways you can attack this. I'll be on the over 1.5 threes here tonight for Naz Reid. But again, I couldn't talk you off of him on his points, because again, we've noticed that he's coming off of those screens, cutting to the basket and getting those layups as well for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. So we're huge Naz Reid fans here tonight in game 5 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So agreement there on Naz Reid with you there, Chris. You want to take us over to player prop number 3?
Yes, sir. Let's do it. Love Naz Reid tonight. Last player prop I'll go. Can't do a Propcast without mentioning this guy, especially with how good he's been playing. Mr. Doncic, Luka here, I think there's a couple of different ways you could play him as well. I specifically want to target his rebounds and assist line. The number's sitting at 17.5. And I think it's right on par with where, potentially where it should be. It's really a half of, exactly what he's averaging here. He is averaging slightly over. So not a little over nine assists on 15 potential in the playoffs. Then those numbers have been very, very similar throughout the conference finals as well. He just has the ball in his hands a lot. Out of everybody in the conference final, he has the highest usage rate at 35%. That's not just in this series. I'm sorry, 33%, but not just in this series, but in the entirety of the, all of the players. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Karl-Anthony Towns, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Edwards. Like, Luka has the ball in his hands more than any other player. And for that reason, you see his number. You see him getting his numbers. He's averaging just under 10 rebounds as well on 14.5 rebound chances. He's really getting those things off the rim. And what was almost kept me off just a tad bit, is that there's been some correlation with him cashing this rebounds and assist prop because he hits it and then he does it. And then he hits it and he doesn't. And he's just coming off a really strong game overall. But he did not but he has not hit it in back-to-back games. I think the minutes will be there for him today because it is a closeout game. He's averaging 42 minutes per game, just under 42 minutes per game in the playoffs. And I just think he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton here, one thing about Dallas is, and he's the leader of the crew here. Dallas is 4-0 straight up and against the spread, coming off a loss, and they typically bounce back early. So I consider the Luka first quarter points prop just because he shot the ball. He didn't shoot the ball terribly, bad, but I just don't think they have a matchup for him. Anthony Edwards guarded him in game 4. He wanted to take on that challenge, and he did a pretty good job. I thought he did a pretty good job. The refs also, we can debate that they, let him be a little handsy with him. But I do think that while that was sustainable for one game, I don't think it's going to be sustainable for 2 games. And even if it is, like, he still has major size advantage here. Anthony Edwards will weigh it down eventually on the offensive end, on the defensive end, and you'll have to stick Kyle Anderson on him, which, there's a big size discrepancy there. And Luka's just going to get to his spots and make his shots and, get his teammates involved. So I think he'll continue to trust his teammates. Dallas has played better on the road. I expect those role players to play better, play a little bit better and knock down some of those shots. PJ Washington was 2 for 9 from the 3-point line. I think we see some regression from him, potentially making a couple more shots. Jaden Hardy played well. And then you got Derrick Jones Jr. So, and the lob is always going to be there as well, right? So rebounds and assists specifically for Luka. I couldn't talk anybody off the whole points, rebounds, and assists as well. 17.5 is the rebounds and assist number that I played.
Yeah, I was an idiot in the last game and took the under PRA for Luka. So that backfired really bad for me. But yeah, I mean, look, for everything that you mentioned, Chris, that the usage rate, right? It all just comes down for Luka because we know it's either 2 guys that are going to have the ball in their hand. It's Kyrie and it's Luka. And primarily it is Luka that brings the ball up. He's a point guard. He's a facilitator. He's the offense for this team, right? And we sometimes see Luka and Kyrie kind of your turn, my turn kind of thing. But I think when it matters the most, we know that like the usage rate for Luka is going to be there, right? But again, it depends on what they're going to also do defensively against Luka. They try to throw different looks at him, whether it's Jaden McDaniels, whether it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I frankly don't think it matters. But I think also the advantage that getting Derek Lively back here tonight is going to be big for them, for him getting the lobs and things like that as well. So not that Daniel Gafford can't do it, but I for whatever reason, I trust Derek Lively a little bit more than I do with Daniel Gafford because, he's guy that tends to get into foul trouble, does Daniel Gafford. So, yeah, man, again, I think Luka, if he wants to close it out tonight and make a statement, I think it's going to have to be in his hands. So, I couldn't talk you off of Luka here tonight.
If you trust Lively more because he grassroots, like he's fed into the Dallas system and has a really good coach in Jason Kidd. You don't trust Daniel Gafford as much because he played for the Washington Wizards this season.
Well, I would have thought that would have corrected itself by now, but apparently it hasn't. Maybe he still has some something left over from there, some of the Washington water over there for the nation's capital. But I think that I think you and I talked about this is when they not drafted, but they traded for him. It was just to add a little bit more depth behind him because there was a flash early where he played those first couple games where he looked again like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar out there for this team, but it only lasted like 2 games. And after that, he went back to kind of like being Daniel Gafford. So, I just think that, there might be some effects left from the Wizards there as well for Daniel Gafford. All right, player prop number 3 here for me, Chris. Couple different ways I can go here. I think I've been all on the Minnesota side right now, but I think Mike Conley has really been a guy that's been able to contribute some type of scoring for his team in the Wolves. And you take a look at what he's been able to do over the last 3 games here. He's had at least 14 points over the last 3 games. He had 14 in game 4, 16 in game 3, 18 in game 2. So I think they're going to need that here tonight from him as well. His points prop right now is sitting at 12.5 at even money. We know that he can consistently knock down those 3-point shots. Didn't have a great 3-point shooting night in game 4. It was only 1 of 4, but he was 5 of 9 from the floor. Did get to the free throw line as well. So I do think that Mike Conley will be able to contribute here tonight. It feels like a low number here, but again, it has to be a team effort from the Wolves. And we saw that in game 4 from this team as well, where you had, I want to say all 5 starters were in double figures for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yeah, Jaden McDaniels had 10. We know Cat had 25, 29 for Edwards, 13 for Rudy Gobert. So he's going to play around 32 to 34 minutes is Mike Conley for this team. But when he's out there, he does make the most of his minutes. He's a guy, again, like I said, that can consistently knock down the three-point shot. So I think, again, asking him to get 13 points here tonight, I don't think is a tall order for a guy that's done it in 3 straight games. And also a guy that's not afraid to get to the basket and tech of the rim. So he's just not relying on that 3-point shot, but he has been effective getting to the to the basket as well. So all that being said, Mike Conley over 12.5 points here tonight at even money right now. Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it correlates well with your Anthony Edwards rebounds and assists look. Because if Anthony Edwards is going to be dishing, and we expect the Dallas Mavericks defense to continue to hound Anthony Edwards and make him be aggressive and be a playmaker, then Mike Conley could be the beneficiary, right? We've seen it be Jaden McDaniels. We've seen it be, Nas Reed. And we've already seen it be Mike Conley as well. So, yeah, I couldn't talk you off Mike Conley in this spot. I think he'll garner a lot less attention than Anthony Edwards will. Maybe even some more attention goes to Karl-Anthony Towns after he shot the ball so well in that last game. And, some of those other guys are definitely going to be able to benefit off of that. So Mike Conley, expecting him to play big minutes as well at that point guard position. He is the head of the snake. Makes a ton of sense to take his points prop here, for 12.5.
All right, so there is 3 player props each from myself and Chris. Before we get into some early finals MVP talks here, before we do get to best bet, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor over on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network that ties in very nicely with the Propcast, and that's Rhythm. If you're betting on NBA player props, well, of course you are because you're listening to the Propcast. You also need to check out Rhythm. Download Rhythm. Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning our algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help you feel even more confident in your picks, which you can make wherever you normally place your bets or DFS picks. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll through a sportsbook. Rhythm also allows you to create your own custom NBA models so you can get AI-backed money line, spread, and total picks for every playoff game. Start a free 7-day trial and start winning with your NBA player props with Rhythm. Available wherever you do get your apps. All right, Chris, let's get into some early NBA Finals MVP talk. And I think this probably is a good time for us to get into it right now before we do find out what happens in this Western Conference Finals series tonight and then going forward. So, courtesy of DraftKings right now, Jason Tatum is the odds-on favorite at -115, followed by Luka Doncic at +270. Jaylen Brown's at 6-1, Anthony Edwards at 15-1, Kyrie Irving 22-1, Porzingis at 40-1, 45-1 for Derek White, 70-1 for Karl-Anthony Towns, and Drew Holiday at 70-1, and then it goes to 250-1 for some of these role players for respective teams. Al Horford in particular is at 450-1. So, Chris, I know that barring something catastrophic here for the Wolves, I think that if you want to get down on the Wolves and maybe make like some type of beer money bet or a pizza bet, that if you do think they come back, you're probably just wise to bet on Anthony Edwards to win Finals MVP, right? Because the updated series price right now for this Mavericks and the Wolves series is at +425. Now, if you think that, again, Wolves get to there and come back from a 3-0 deficit, that's never happened in the conference final history, Anthony Edwards at 15-1 will be your best bet, in my opinion, there. I mean, if you want to go a little bit deeper, 70-1 for Karl-Anthony Towns, you want to do that. But I want to start the conversation here with Minnesota because I feel like it's going to be a quicker conversation here, Chris. So I think, again, I would direct at least our listeners, and I'm pretty sure you agree with that, to take Anthony Edwards right now at 15-1.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way you would be able to look at it. Karl-Anthony Towns has been so poor. I think he was shooting, 23% from the floor and 13%, 12% or something like that from the three-point line before his last game. So, yeah, I mean, Anthony Edwards' usage is the second highest, and it's there for a reason. It's slowly but surely increased throughout the playoffs. Now he's second, right behind Luka for overall usage, and I see it at 16-1 overall on BetMGM, looking like the best number. But yeah, I mean, it can only be Anthony Edwards at this point, based on what we've seen so far, especially with the multiple poor performances from Karl-Anthony Towns, and then Naz Reid being a no-show in the last game as well. And I mean, if he would have got one more assist, he would have had first. He would have been the youngest player to get a triple-double in the conference final. So yeah, only Anthony Edwards here. Quick one,
Yeah. So again, if you do think Minnesota comes back here, 15-1 right now is the number you want to get down on Anthony Edwards' side, and like Chris mentioned, 16-1 right now. If you do have access to BetMGM. So let's talk about what we think is going to be the matchup right now. Luka for the Mavericks is at plus 270. And just comparing this to the price right now for the NBA Finals, a series winner price, Boston is going to be a minus 225 favorite, no matter who they end up playing, whether it's Minnesota or whether it is Dallas, because both of those teams in the Western Conference are priced at plus 185. So then that brings a conversation that, again, if you are looking to, and if you think again Dallas gets the job done, I think all of us do believe that, then Luka at plus 270 for Finals MVP. I think the other one, again, because the narrative is going to be there, Chris, Kyrie Irving going up against his former team. That number's at 22-1 right now for Kyrie Irving to be Finals MVP. So at least from the Dallas side, I think those were the two that you probably want to get on. Better price than the plus 185 for the series.
Agreed. I think when I think about it from a matchup perspective, Kyrie is shifty, he's quick, but Dallas, Boston, they've struggled against guards, right? We just seen Tyrese Halliburton really light them up. So I see 25-1 for Kyrie over on BetMGM, and I think if you like Kyrie, definitely you want to shop and get the best price. But we keep talking about it. Luka, man, this dude, I see it 275 is the best number I see right now, and that's on BetMGM as well. But we'll have to be a look towards Luka. He's gonna have the ball in his hands. He's gonna have the stats to back it up as well. Unless Kyrie absolutely he would have to go nuclear, in my opinion. What would Kyrie have to average in order for Luka not to get it, just based on Luka's current numbers right now?
I think it would have to be 30 plus, Chris. I think that's a minimum number, and it's not that he cannot do it, but it's just the fact that also that we know Luka, outside of filling up the points, like the rebounds and assists are going to be there for him as well, because he's had a triple double now. I think 6 times in the postseason, if I'm not mistaken, at least this year. I'll have to go back and let me fact check that, but I know he did get the first one just in the series alone against the Timberwolves. He had one in game 2. He had another one in the losing effort in game 4. He had one in game 6 against the Thunder. So something similar, and we could talk about the Eastern Conference Finals MVP that Tatum, I believe, led the team in the Eastern Conference Finals in points per game, rebounds per game, and assists per game. But Jaylen Brown still got the MVP because I feel like Jaylen Brown was more efficient from the floor. He had a 40-point game. And also he had that clutch 3-pointer, and I believe it was game 1 that sent it to overtime. So I think those little narrative things, that if Kyrie's able to do something incredible, I mean, the iconic shot that he had for the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Warriors is, I think something to that magnitude would have to be there for Kyrie to be there. But I feel like it's going to be a very popular bet for Kyrie to get MVP because the narrative would go up against the Celtics, his former team. I think that's going to be bet on a lot, but it's going to be very hard to ignore Luka, who could, again, we know that could walk into any gym and put up a triple-double, whether it's in the regular season or whether it's in the playoffs. So, I mean, obviously those would be the two guys for the Dallas side. Anybody else from Dallas, could be those two guys for them.
Yeah, no, just those two guys, like you said, him enough. I think Kyrie will have to average about 33, honestly, because Luka's averaging 28. Luka's averaging 28.99. Like these are video games type number that Luka is putting up, and field goal percentage just continues to get stronger throughout the playoffs. So I think it's no rocket science to figure out that Luka would be the favorite here. Plus 275 is not necessarily the worst odds. I think that number decreases, if of course they do end up winning Game 5, or whenever they advance. If they are the team that advances, that number gets smaller for Luka Doncic here for sure.
And then for the Boston side right now, like I mentioned, Jason Tatum is minus 115. They are, like I mentioned, going to be minus 225 for the final series price. So I think this is a bigger conversation because for the Celtics side, because they have a lot of depth on this team. Porzingis should be back, but I think it's criminal that they're only giving you 40-1 for a guy that's missed 10 plus games at right now at minimum. So Tatum right now minus 115, plus 600 right now for Jaylen Brown, who was also the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I think the other two guys I would consider Derek White 45-1 and then Jrue Holiday 70-1 for those teams. So when we talked about the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, a lot of us did give out Jaylen Brown because, well, I don't remember what the price was on Jason Tatum. I don't want to misspeak. I feel like I saw like a minus 500 or something before the series started. But you could make a case, honestly, that Jrue Holiday was really, really good in that series for the Eastern Conference Finals because he makes plays that don't show up in the stat sheet, right? Like the defensive plays. And I know that I think it was the end of Game 3 where he stole the ball from Andrew Nembhard. Obviously, that shows up in the stat sheet as well. But I felt like, in my opinion, it was Jaylen Brown, Jrue Holiday, and then Jason Tatum. And I know the stats aren't going to be there for Jrue Holiday, but the way that he's able to affect the game on both sides of the court, Chris, you could make a case for a guy like Jrue Holiday. And he also has that championship pedigree. He has a ring that he won with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think Jason Tatum does rise to the occasion, but just his inconsistencies in the shooting percentage, that's not always there for him. Because you and I were talking offline that he just falls in love with the jump shot and the three-point shot and doesn't attack the basket like Jaylen Brown did in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I think you can make a case for any of those four guys. I obviously understand that Jason Tatum is the odds-on favorite at minus 115. So if you do think the Celtics are going to win this series, you probably just want to bet the Finals MVP with Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown at 6-1. And if you do think one of those role players in Derek White or Jrue Holiday, I think there's a case to be made there as well. But any thoughts on the Celtics side there, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's going to be dependent upon the difference between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, in my opinion, is going to come down to who Derek Jones Jr. guards. He's an excellent defender. And they put Tatum on. If they put him on Tatum, I can see Jaylen Brown having a better series and vice versa. So, probably trying to isolate just a tad bit more, into whoever is that other person, trying to get them. Because I think Derek Jones Jr. is by far the best defender they have on the floor. Luka and Kyrie's defenses play really, really well, but Boston is a tad bit bigger than Minnesota is, in my opinion. As far as there's no like really Mike Conley's on the floor. Like they got a lot of length and a lot of athleticism. So yeah, I think Tatum probably wants to win the Finals MVP. I think Jaylen Brown probably still wants to win it as well. So one of those guys, I think would be the way that I would go as well. No surprise. But I see Derek White at 66-1. I think that just not like you said, pizza money. Not anything too crazy, but Derek White, if he could be that unsung hero, right? That guy that we've seen him have multiple, really good games, multiple games in a row where he, goes over 20. What you're saying about Jrue Holiday and the impact of the game, I think is also applicable here for Derek White. Just his ability to be able to rebound the ball, pass the ball. He averages, for his size, he averages more blocks than some centers, and he can shoot the ball. So if he gets hot from the 3-point line, that could be detrimental for the opposing team. Now, here's the hiccup, and why I would go super, super light on this is because Derek White is, he's out there to be a marksman. He's a 3-point shooter, and the Dallas Mavericks defense has been really good from the 3-point line. Outside of Game 4 that just happened, where they let the Timberwolves shoot 46% from the 3-point line, that we saw them really clamp up the Timberwolves, really clamp up the Oklahoma City Thunder. And outside of that Clippers, those 2 games for the Clippers, their 3-point defense has been excellent. So I'm not, sold on Derek White, and that's why the odds are so long, of course. But if you think that, Jaylen Brown struggles and Jason Tatum could potentially struggle, I think it could be worth just a small sprinkle on Derek White at 66-1.
Yeah. I've been a huge fan of Derek White and what he's been able to do for this for this Boston Celtics team. He's a guy that can knock down that 3-point shot. And you also take a look at assists. Assists have been there as well for a guy like Derek White, frankly. So if it comes down to it where these guys are averaging 25 points per game, or Jason Tatum just has a series where he doesn't show up, and it's because one of these other role players did step up for this team, I think it's more than likely going to be Derek White. So as of right now, I would definitely get down on Luka at plus 270 and then put some type of beer/pizza money on Kyrie at 22-1. Again, definitely shop around because Chris said that BetMGM has a better number on those MVPs. And then Derek White at 45-1. I don't know why I have some type of bias towards Jrue Holiday because I'm just a huge fan of his game. At that point, at 70-1, I think those odds are intriguing to me as well. But again, definitely shop around for the best number. But if you're feeling really, really wild and you're a believer in a Frenchman, Rudy Gobert is out there close to 500-1 if you that interests you at all for Rudy Gobert. But Anthony Edwards would be the number right now at around 16-1 as the best number out there. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up strong here for this Propcast. Let's give out our best bets before we do wrap it up here. You want to lead us off?
Yes, sir. We are going to go with Mr. Nas Reed. Nas Reed, please stand up over over his points prop, 10.5. I know you said you like the threes as well. It's just the perfect bounce back spot. Being back home, dude had 38 points in the first 2 games combined, and we just asked him to get 11 here. We know how big of an offensive, presence he can be. Clearly, 6th man of the year as well. So I'll take Nas Reed to go over his 11.5 points, thinking that he comes in and helps Anthony Edwards with the score load here. Best bet, Nas Reed over 10.5 points.
Yeah, we see him do it, especially at home, right? And I think, like you mentioned, being back at home, I think that's only going to help a guy like Nas Reed. Great, bounce back spot for him. He had 15 in game 1, 23 in game 2, and then 14 in game 3 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So yeah, I'm a Nas Reed fan here tonight as well. My best bet, I'm gonna go Anthony Edwards, man. Rebounds and assists to go over 14.5. Again, I think that he can get to another triple-double. He's fell rebound and assist short in game 3, fell assist short in game 2, starting game 4. And like Chris mentioned, he's been the leading rebounder for this team. And he's done a phenomenal job. So I expect the minutes to continue to be there. He's played at least 41 minutes in this series against Mavericks. And again, the role players are going to have to step up. We talked about Nas Reed, Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley. And I think that Anthony Edwards will be able to find those guys. He also does, like I mentioned, a phenomenal job of rebounding the basketball as well. So 14.5 is a number right now, minus 105 currently over on DraftKings. But again, definitely shop around and get the best number for Anthony Edwards. Rebounds and assists to go over 14.5 as my best bet for game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Propcast. Game 5 player props in the books. We also talked about some early MVP, NBA Finals MVP talk. We're going to be ramping up NFL starting next week. We'll get that schedule, we'll tweet it out. So this is a good reminder that, again, if you're not subscribed to the Propcast YouTube channel, just go in, looking for the Propcast Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Do us a favor, subscribe. We're on the march to get to 1,000 subscribers before the NFL season starts. So hopefully we can get there. But we can only do that we can't do that without the help of you guys who subscribe to the Propcast. Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man? Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Nah, man. Enjoy the games, everyone. Best of luck. And I think it's more so just enjoy the games, man. Hopefully we catch the props. I think we got some really good looks. I will be telling you on Mr. Edwards to get over those rebounds and assists. Love that line and that look from you, Munaf, something that I didn't take into consideration. And, if you're, like you said, if you're watching, definitely hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review if you can as well. It's greatly appreciated. And we hope you cash your bets, man. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Yeah, man, we'll be back again. We'll do an NBA Finals preview as well. We'll do some series props, things like that. And then obviously our daily game props for NBA Finals. So a lot of content in the works for the Propcast. going to be here all year long. So hopefully you guys join us for the ride. We've been doing exceptionally well dating back to the NFL season. So definitely looking forward to taking this show to a whole other level. Make sure you guys follow Chris on Twitter. That's at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. We'll be back. Man, we'll see if there's a game 6 and maybe we can do a show. If not, we'll be back next week for sure for the Propcast. Till then, good luck with your bets. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you guys down the road. And make sure you always let it ride.